to go full screen here for a second. And I will be, give me 2 seconds. Okay. Dr. Lee Ostler and Stephanie, are you with us? There we are. Okay. Listen, I'm really excited. I'm really excited about this today because we have Dr. Lee and Stephanie Ostler on the call. And Dr. Ostler is the author of this book. It's a brand new book called Redox Matters, Connecting the Dots Between Redox Biology and Health. And we'll get into this just in a little bit. But first, just a little bit about yourself. You are a past president of the American Association for Oral Systemic Health. And you've been a clinical instructor for cosmetic dentists. You're also run a dental practice and very, very knowledgeable. I once heard you just a few months ago give a presentation to an Australian group on redox signaling. Now, I've been around this 12 years. I've heard some pretty smart people discuss redox biology. But let me tell you, Dr. Lee, you took it to a whole new level. I mean, you took it to a whole new level. And I realized at that moment that you were going to be a force to be reckoned with in the whole world of redox biology. And your understanding of redox biology and its intricate relationships into all of these systems and organs in our body is very, very profound. Your book is extremely readable for the layperson. It's beautifully written. But I want to go back to where your journey started, because it started where other people starts, health challenges that are going on and being introduced to these molecules and having a life-changing impact. So anyway, let me do this. Let me hand the call over to you and your wife and tell us a little bit about your journey and your story.
Well, thank you, Alan, for having us on, and hello, everybody, for tuning in. We appreciate the comments and the endorsement and that recognition. You're right that our entry into this arena is probably no different than anybody else's. While I might understand the science better than others, we still have to have some, at some level, we have a personal experience with it that opens our eyes or turns our head or gets our attention in some way. And that's the way it happened with us. The background here is my wife, Stephanie, for 30 plus years, going on into the 4th decade, has had a lot of health challenges. It wasn't shortly after we got married, maybe a few days even, that her symptoms began to exhibit. And so it's, for the duration of our time together, you know, it's been this way. And we've been to a lot of doctors. We've been to a lot of university medical centers, and it went on for probably, I don't know, 15 years, literally undiagnosed, except we had probably 10 or 12 other diagnoses, and they would change all the time because nobody really knew. And I think everybody had a hard time saying, we don't know. So anyway, we finally found out that she did have some abnormalities in her major endocrine gland in her brain, the pituitary gland, that was creating some hormones that drive the rest of the body. And so she went through, over the course of a few years, she went through 2 separate pituitary surgeries to try and remove these cells that were producing hormones that they shouldn't have been producing. And it just continued to escalate and got worse until finally, she had other endocrine glands in her body, the adrenal glands removed. And so now she's on oral medicine. Well, this set her up for some profound hypersensitivities. She became profoundly sensitive to all kinds of things in the environment. We built a new home that had, no chemicals and no formaldehyde and special air scrubbers. And I was the sentry at the front door controlling who got access to the house. I would smell them, and if there was any odors, it's like they couldn't come in. We lived in a bubble, and she wound up really living in her bedroom. And long story short, we were finally referred to a local physician who, at one of our visits, I told him, I said, I think we're plateauing again. What can we do? And he just looked at me and he said, I think you need to get her on some redox signaling molecules. And I looked at him and we know each other pretty good. And I said, I don't even know what you're talking about. And he goes, just go Google it and get some. And that was the end of the conversation. So I did. I Googled it, we found some, and we started, and within about 36, maybe we could stretch it to 48 hours. It was like, she woke up, and it was a holy cow, what just happened? And that really got my attention. 2 weeks later, I'm at the AOSH meeting, the American Academy for Oral Systemic Health meeting, and I discovered the SIAs there. We had a joint meeting with the American College for the Advancement of Medicine, and they were into this gut health, redox, cell detox, gut-brain axis, all the things that functional integrative physicians deal with. And they were all over this, and I really got an education of what it legitimized it for me. So I started taking redox signaling molecules, and in my brain, I'm like, I can think better, I'm clearer, I'm sharper. Can I say that my poop changed? I mean, it was just everything. I suddenly I didn't have the head turning thing, but there was no question that something was going on different inside of me that was good. And so that's where I guess I called in some of my previous skills, where I was in the American Academy for Oral Systemic Health, where we're trying to take the science and relate it to the health of the body and make the connections. Mm-hmm. And I said, I've got to prove this to me. I have to know that this is true. I have to know how the electrons move around in the cell to make these pathways activate. And 24 months later, this comes out of the computer, and we recognize really what we've got here as an A. But that was the backstory that created the impetus for me to take that deep dive and to try and stitch it together so we could connect those dots and explain why this works and how it works. And hopefully we can just kind of set that aside, or at least explain it better. So again, I credit my wife, with being the true force behind this. If it hadn't have been for her physician making that recommendation and kind of sending me off into the wild blue, it was a wild goose chase at the time, and to do some of the research, and it was all organic, it was all original. As you know, there really wasn't much out there, so we dug this up from the trenches and was able to kind of put it together. I'll let Stephanie, maybe she can kind of describe what life was like beforehand, and maybe in her words she can kind of tell you what's going on now. So
very cool. Hi, Stephanie.
Hi. So I met Lee in 1987. We got married. I took on 5 children to raise. And 2 weeks after we got married, I got sick. And over the years, I just kept going downhill until I was bedridden. Because they had me on such high levels of pharmaceuticals to control my discomfort that I wound up sleeping the day away. And I used to do crafts. I used to cook, clean the house, and it went to nothing. And then Dr. Lynn told us to get some ASEA, so Lee got some. I started taking it. And suddenly I was out of bed. I was doing my crafts. I was cooking. I was doing everything I used to do.
It was a pretty dramatic change when you're on so many narcotics and antidepressants and sleep medications just to be functional, and even that it wasn't functional. It was just survival. Yeah. And we didn't know. We didn't know what we didn't know, and repeated. Cycling through many different physicians' offices and even university hospital settings where some of these really high-level endocrine disorder clinics exist. The disorder she has is like 1 in 300,000 people have this disorder. That's how rare this is. Yeah. And so you don't find this in average city USA or anywhere else. You're in a big city with a research hospital generally. And even that it was like their hands are tied. There's not much they can do except pour more drugs, and it's a pretty precarious life. And so it's kind of nice to have your wife back. It's nice to see the payoff happen. That's where
I got to say, when she said like she was 2 weeks married, I'm thinking, well, maybe she's allergic to you, but obviously I'm joking. But Look, I can tell from the emotion, Stephanie, you know, what you dealt with for almost, you know, 40 years, 30 plus years.
Yeah.
And to all of a sudden in 48 hours to have such a transformation and for that to have continued for you. I mean, it's life-changing. You know, we use that term too much. You know, we watch we eat a hamburger that's nice and we go, oh, it was life-changing. You know, we just use these words wrong. But and then when we truly say it's life-changing, sometimes the meaning is lost. But I appreciate you coming on here and just being vulnerable and sharing just really what this did for you at a profound level. You know, this book, if we just wrap it up here as we talk about Redox Matters, and I'm going to do a shameless plug, redoxmatters.com, redoxmatters.com, if anybody wants to get this book. It really is, look, I'm not saying it's a bedtime story for my 10-year-old. I still have to reread a couple of paragraphs twice, but it's definitely accessible. And even just the first 20 pages, your overview of redox biology alone, those 20 pages alone are worth this book. And so there's just, I'll also say this, Dr. Lee, you're quite the poet. You know, although there's a lot of science in here, you have a beautiful way of writing and stuff about talking about these molecules living in that space between energy and matter. And you paint some really beautiful pictures that I really hope allow people to understand how profound and important these molecules are. Any final thoughts on the book or Redox in general?
Well, I would, you mentioned earlier in your presentation, and if you didn't get anybody watching this later didn't see that, I'd hope you'll somehow get access to one of Alan's presentations that where he discusses in a kind of at a high level what this is and how it works. But Redox really is at that pivotal point, and I think looking forward, the concept of this breakthrough status, we haven't seen yet where this is really going to wind up going. We've been given some foreshadowing ideas related to energy, and this really starts at the mitochondria, and we explore that deeply in the book. And I hope that doesn't scare a lot of people away from it. But one of the reasons I wrote the book was because I had a lot of physicians and health professionals asking me when I would talk to them, they'd say, well, show me the science. And as you know, just by the nature of the kind of product that we have and how it's been brought to the market, that's a difficult question to answer. And it isn't until you get into the grounding science, into the redox biology, as you've otherwise demonstrated, which is what's happening even in big pharma right now. They're going into this headlong. It's about those redox switches that activate these pathway genes that help us activate the doctor inside of us, if you will, the inner doctor. That's what really activates and creates the recovery that we all seek. And so that was part of the backstory. I mean, my wife was kind of the impetus of getting into this. And then as you dive into the grounding science, suddenly you can explain it. It suddenly makes sense because it becomes almost self-intuitively obvious. So.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Well, look, there's obviously a lot more to talk about redox, and we could talk for a lot more. I know that you're doing a very special call tomorrow, discussing redox signaling. Same time, same station actually here, is going to be Friday night as well, where you're going to dig deeper into it. So people are obviously very, very welcome to join that as well. But for now, guys, thank you so much. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Dr. Lee. Really appreciate you sharing your stories. And Dr. Ostler, thank you for taking the time to put a book together that I think is a monumental book. I think this book will play a very, very important role in helping everybody understand just how profound and how important these molecules are in people's lives. So tremendous gratitude to both of you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Okay,